It was billed as the new Iranian Supreme Leader's first public address since his appointment. Instead, it was a statement read out in Mojtaba Khamenei's name by a news anchor on state television. In it, he purportedly vows to fight on.
It is certain that the leverage of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must continue to be used. Studies have been conducted regarding the opening of other fronts in which the enemy has very little experience and would be highly vulnerable. Activating these fronts would take place if the wartime situation persists and in accordance with broader strategic considerations.
And that brings us to our Spotlight segment. Let me say hello to Farad Khajkvar, Director of Studies at the School of Higher Studies, EHESS, author of the forthcoming book in French, Iran, the End of Totalitarianism. Thanks for being with us here on France 24.
Yep, you're welcome.
Your thoughts on hearing this statement read out by a news anchor from Iranian state television instead of Mojtaba Khamenei himself?
You know, he has been wounded. We know that he has been wounded, and his leg has been wounded, and his face. And on the other hand, you know, he is afraid to be targeted by the Israelis and the Americans and be killed. So he does not show up nowadays, and I think it will take some time before he is entirely healed. And then he intends to pursue the policy of his father so far, because he has a hatred of the Americans and Israelis who have killed his father, his wife, one of his children, and many other people with whom he was, you know, in very close touch, mainly the revolutionary guards, you know, hierarchy. So my guess is that he doesn't show up for the reasons I mentioned, and at the same time, he has announced that he will get the Hormuz Strait, you know, closed for the time being.
Farad, we had British tabloid newspaper The Sun this Thursday quoting a medical source in Tehran as saying that the new supreme leader is in fact in a coma. There's the headline from that story. Of course, it's hard to speculate sitting here in Paris, but has the shape of what the leadership of the Islamic Republic changed after the passing of his father?
You know, I'm doubtful whether he was elected by the assembly of the experts, you know, because they have to gather together and then vote. My guess is that under the pressure of the Revolutionary Guards, you know, he was just chosen by a handful of people, and then the other members of the Assembly of the Experts were somehow forced to follow suit. First. Second, he is not his father. He is, I would say, totally dependent on the Revolutionary Guards. In that respect, you know, he is different from at least one other candidate that was the brother of Larijani, who is an Ayatollah. Mujtaba was not an Ayatollah, was inferior rank of what is called Hujjatul Islam. And now he has been promoted, you know, politically to the level of Ayatollah, exactly in the same way as his father was done. In that respect, I would say religion is totally dependent on politics in nowadays Iran, although it is apparently a theocracy. The second point which I am stressing is that those who are ruling the country are, as a matter of fact, the Revolutionary Guards and their hierarchy. and he is totally subservient to them, so far as I can guess.
Farad Khajkvar, I know a lot of your field work over the years has been on counterterrorism, on non-state actors. So please stay with us for this next segment, because we want your comment on it, because we've had among the news this Thursday an Iranian-linked hacking group which has claimed responsibility for a cyber attack on a US-based medical device and services provider by the name of Stryker. This as authorities probe the possibility of Iranian sleeper cells acting all over the world, including inside of the United States. August Hackinson has that story.
Has Iran activated so-called sleeper cells in Western countries to retaliate for the killing of the country's supreme leader? Concerns about that possibility are growing. This week, a federal government alert was sent to law enforcement agencies in the United States. According to the message, the US intercepted encrypted communications believed to have originated in Iran.
It's possible the transmissions could be intended to activate or provide instructions to pre-position sleeper assets operating outside the originating country.
The alert does not link the threat to a specific location, but it instructs law enforcement agencies to increase monitoring. So far, the Trump administration has offered few details about the level of any potential threat from terrorists or spies working undercover. When asked whether Iran had activated such cells in the US, President Donald Trump did not directly answer the question, but he said he's aware of their existence. Trump also blamed a partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, which he says is limiting the government's ability to respond.
Well, they've been trying for a long time. We've been very much on top of it. One of the things we have to do is get the Democrats to stop the Democrat shutdown.
Fears that Iran could use sleeper cells intensified earlier this month after a gunman opened fire at a bar in Austin, Texas, killing 3 people. Investigators say there are indicators of possible terrorism.
And we're with Iranian-born sociologist Farad Khajkvar. Your thoughts on these sleeper cells? What's the likelihood?
You know, the web is the revenge of the weak against the strong. With the software, ingeniously drafted, you can intervene and have an effect on the management of the stronger country, for instance, the United States. But it doesn't hold for a long time. It holds for a few hours or a few days. And that's what Iran is doing. I mean, using the weak spots of every highly industrialized country, namely the web, and by inventing a software, trying to intervene and to block few things. And then sometimes, by using a person who might be, mentally disturbed, trying to put up a kind of on-the-spot terrorism. But it is not a large-scale terrorism. It's a kind of small, fascinatingly, impressive, because all the media in the world will talk about it, terrorism that has a kind of, I would say, mental, subjective impact rather than an objective one. And in that respect, Iran is playing the game. It does it, not only on terrorism, but it does it, for instance, against the American might. Of course, there's a disproportion, obvious disproportion between the Iranian military and the American. But they know that Trump does not want to intervene by ground forces. And second, they know that the price of oil skyrocketing, Trump will be disturbed because the American voters have a midterm elections and he might suffer from that. So Iran is using every, I would say, tender spot of the American might in order to find a kind of survival policy. And in that respect, in spite of the fact that they are weakened, they are not, able to have the Iranian society with them. The Iranian society is against them. In spite of that, they are able to play this game because they know the limitations of Trump and his unwillingness or perhaps incapacity to have a large military ground force in Iran.
One final question, Farad. We saw obviously the thousands, perhaps tens of thousands killed in those mass protests against the regime back in January. How many people today, as the war goes on, support the regime, are true believers?
There's a tiny minority. I would say perhaps between 5 and 10% of the population. They are not ideologically behind the regime. They are behind the regime because it gives them the economic opportunity to survive in a deadly shaped economy in which middle classes are suffering deeply and becoming more and more dependent for the daily life on, I would say, the minimum level standard of living. That's this 5 to 10%, who plays the game of the regime, and in that respect, they are, the winner because they killed around 35,000 people in 2 nights, 7 and 8 January, if my memory is correct, and in that respect, the protest movement was crushed, and Trump promised to intervene in their favor, and it didn't do at that time. If he had done it at that time, my guess is that the result might have been different from what is happening nowadays, where people are totally demobilized.
Farad Khajkvar, many thanks for joining us live here on France 24.
You're welcome.